We are live.
We are live. The Hunt for Success 21, right, Ryan?
Number 21.
The Hunt for Success podcast.com. Please follow us and subscribe on YouTube, The Hunt for Success, on Instagram, Facebook. I think that's it, right?
And check out our website, thehuntforsuccesspodcast.com.
Dean Kirkland, how are you?
I'm really well. How you doing?
Very good. Very excited that we don't know each other that well and that we're going to take some time today to get to know each other. So you were going to tell me a story about your daughter at Columbia River?
Yeah, I am.
Let's hear it.
So this was my hometown, and I graduated from Columbia River in 1986, and I was the number one lineman in the state for football that year. I was a state
Offensive lineman, right?
offensive and defensive, and I was a state champ, and I had the record for the pins. I had 28 pins under a minute.
What's a pin?
When you pin a guy in wrestling.
Oh, okay.
And so I wrestled heavyweight at 263 pounds. And I won the state tournament in less than, collectively,
You were 265 in
2
high
minutes.
school?
263.
Jeez.
So I weigh 255 now. So
I graduated high school at about $1.55.
That's the weight limit in UFC is 265.
Is that the max?
I think so. I don't think you can be over that for heavyweight.
Wow.
So you would have been pushing the limit of heavyweight in high school.
Right.
So you
Anyway, so I loved wrestling, and we were tough. We boxed and we wrestled, and part of my life mission, which we can talk about later, is just achievement. And as time went on, and I had children, my daughter was at St. Mary's, an all-girls school in Oregon, and she was dating a young man, and I won't say his name. He was at Columbia River. Very nice young man.
let's call him Steve.
We'll call him Steve, the Steve. And the physical education teacher over there was also coaching with John O'Rourke, who was my football coach, and he'd been there 40 years. He's since retired. And his son.
Kevin.
That's right. They were little boys when I was in my heyday. And anyway, I knew Kevin and Quinn. So the physical education teacher stopped this individual, Steve, we'll call him, and said, "Hey, I hear you're dating Victoria Kirkland." Or I don't know what they call it, going with, or whatever the term is.
Going steady?
It's going steady. I think that's antiquated. I think we would be called a lot of names for that, and I would be douches, right? But he said, "Is that accurate?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'd be real careful. Do you know that Dean Kirkland, her father, was the meanest son of a bitch that ever walked these effing walls in Columbia River?" And we laughed about it later because here she is, 16, 17 years old. And I know who that coach is that said it, and I think he's still there as a coach and teacher. But, raising kids is, it's fun. And sometimes things are funny, and they come back to haunt you sometimes too. But I thought it was just a
Did it work? Did it scare him off? Was he well behaved?
He is a fine young man, and he's since graduated from college, and he always, for the most part, was pretty proper. If not, we would have had a corrective interview.
So did you spend 17 years thinking about that moment?
No.
Because I have a little girl that turns 6 today.
Oh, wow.
And I know exactly in my mind where I'll be when I meet her boyfriend the first time at my gun cleaning station.
Yeah.
Trying to scare the crap out of him.
You start thinking about how you acted when you were younger, don't you? You really do. We all do. We reflect.
I was an angel. I was very respectful.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be any different, but it's probably different with your boys, if you have boys, than it is with your girls, right?
No boys.
I have the son, so.
So it sounds like achievement was important to you in high school.
Yeah.
Did you recognize that at the time?
I think about 14, about 8th grade. There were some things, there are certain things in people's lives that are the catalyst that make them become something. And sometimes they're things that aren't so great. We as a family grew up, we didn't go without, but we didn't have a lot of money. Grandparents had a livestock farm. We worked. We didn't vacation. I think we went on one vacation.
Did you go up around here?
Yeah, we grew up in Hazeldale. And, had a paper out, mowing lawns. I started working construction at 13. But about the time I was in 8th grade, you start thinking, back then it was high school, 10, 11, 12, 7, 8, 9, junior high. You start thinking about, what are you going to be? What are you going to become? And
Well, you did, but a lot of 14-year-olds don't.
and I think that's true. A lot of them are probably lost and unsure. But I started thinking about, what am I going to do? And, I'll never forget, I had a coach in junior high say to me, you'll be lucky when you get to high school in sports. And sports is always a good outlet, whether you're in swimming or basketball or wrestling or golf. It doesn't matter. You got to love competition, and it teaches you lots of things. But one of the things that was said was, you'll be lucky if you play junior varsity football when you get to high school. And I think based on that, those things ignited a fire in me. So, I got some index cards, 3x5, and started writing down goals. And those goals, those led me to bigger goals. And those bigger goals were more goals, and long-term goals, and short-term goals. And one of the biggest goals I could think of was to try to get a scholarship. It was a way out. It was a way to become something. And it seemed so unattainable, especially to a Division I college in the Pac-10 at that time. And I was able to do so. So it was pretty cool.
So goal setting at 14.
You bet.
So what's wrong now? How come millennials and these kids now don't appreciate goal setting? And I mean, I'm sure there are some out there. I mean, I don't want to talk bad.
I think you're kind of generalizing. I mean, I was goal setting at 14. I was sure I was going to be a professional baseball player.
That's awesome.
No doubt in my mind.
Did for both of you guys, was that part of maybe coaching, having coaches? Because I didn't participate in sports.
Mine was passion. Mine was just absolute passion, and I mean, it led me to the way I acted. I mean, I still don't drink to this day. I've never drank. Right. I associated, drinking and partying with that's going to get me in trouble, and trouble's not going to lead me to my goals.
Force of habit, right?
Yeah.
What you're going to become, right? Mm-hmm. What you're going to do. Your daily habits will tell you where you're going to be.
Yeah.
So you obviously you make the varsity team.
I do, as a sophomore, which was a huge deal, and I just figured I'd do the extra work and the fitness and the training and the weight room and those things started to show results.
Did you make varsity wrestling your freshman year, being as big as you were?
I did, as a sophomore. And
okay.
And my coach, I was 6'2", 200 then. He wanted me to wrestle heavyweight, and I didn't want to do it. I mean, those guys were 300 pounds. It was unlimited then. But Jim Chapman was my wrestling coach and a big inspiration to me.
Mr. Chapman.
Mr. Chapman, he's still hanging around.
Yeah, we still talk. I've seen him about a year ago.
Ask him about Mr. Steinman next time you see him.
I will.
In math.
I will.
Yeah.
He's a great man. So he knew I was a big goal setter, and he said, "Hey, look, all those coaches were really good to me." He said, "You are going to be a state champ. I've only had one other. It was Ken Whittle, and we're going to win it as a team. So do what you have to do. It's your mission statement." And so, every year, the next year I got to 230 pounds, and I was 6'3". That was about the height I am today. And, but something did happen to me my junior year. My junior year, and my coach from junior high came up to coach, Don Jarman did, with Jim Chapman. And we went to state, and I ended up taking 6th in wrestling. And he said, "You're going to wrestle this kid." His name's, I think it was John Owens, and he was out of Camp Meridian High School. And he was the 3-time state champion. And he was only 5'10", about 240 pounds, kind of built like a fire plug. He picks me up over his head. Pretty demoralizing when somebody picks you up over their head.
Especially when you weigh 260.
People. Well, I was 230 then. I was no little guy. And it was the second round, and he pinned me. He was 84-0.
Wow.
He went on to play football and wrestle for one of the Montana colleges. I'm not sure which one. But at that moment, I said, that will never, ever happen to me again. I will never be manhandled by anyone, ever. And so I sought out a trainer, Met a guy named Corey Edwards, and he had done some pro wrestling and actually trained with Rocky Johnson, Dwayne Johnson's dad.
Oh,
here in
nice.
town. And I met this guy. I was working at the fair construction, and I thought God screwed up and put two men into one. And so everybody has somebody to look up to in that time. And him and his wife were big into fitness and working out. And so I trained with them. And my mom was big time awesome about my diet. And we were very religious about following it. And it was like 5,000 calories a day. And I'd get up early in the morning at 5 a.m. and run. I'd work out every night. I took the steps to do what it took. And it paid big dividends. Of course, I won state, but then I got the scholarship, too, for football, which was really cool.
So let's fast forward a little bit on the success, because I'm excited to hear a little bit about your NFL career.
Sure.
I had this big plan. I was going, because I follow fantasy football. I'm a fantasy football guy.
Okay.
And so I was going to take all of your stats and convert them into fantasy points.
Okay.
But I ran out of time.
Wah, wah, wah.
Obviously, huge success making the NFL. What was it like being drafted, going through that process emotionally? And, I mean, what did it feel like? And what kind of, I would assume your failure of getting that one wrestling match kind of impacted lighting that fire to not let any obstacles get in your way to get in the NFL. Because when I was in high school, no one ever said this to me because I was never good enough to play football. But all the teachers would say, if you think you're going to be in the NFL, less than 1% of people make it in the NFL, and that was very discouraging. So, talk a little bit about that.
Let's just take a step back. So here I get courted and recruited by a lot of the Pac-10 schools and some of the other schools across the country. I end up choosing University of Washington. That was during the Don James era, which was amazing. A great disciplinarian. He coached like Bear Bryant. He actually coached Nick Saban.
Oh, wow.
At Kent State, Jack Lambert.
Wow.
When I look back at the decision, growing up, Clark County was 150,000 people then. Hazeldale was kind of the it area in town, which now the east side's blown up. So I go up to University of Washington. I don't redshirt. I actually play defensive nose guard. I play my first year. I get hurt, pull a hamstring really bad, end up sitting out the rest of the season. And I played half the season. So the next year I was basically redshirted. So you can practice and get healthy, but you don't play. And so that was really hard. It's like having your candy and then having it taken away. And based on that, the question of will he come back? How will it be? That next level of college football is it's Friday night football under the lights. You talk to even my buddies that I still talk to that are in the pros. I just had one of my guys, Bill Lewis. He played 8 years with the Raiders. He came up and worked with my son, and he was at my house last week, and he said nothing better than Friday night football. But when you get to college, it's all about going to that Rose Bowl. It's just a big deal. I mean, those bowl games are a lot of money for those colleges.
Yeah.
And even then, I think we got to the Rose Bowl. I think it was $12 million, $6 million a team, and I think it's like $40 million now. It's a big deal.
I hate to throw you off topic here, but what's your opinion on college players getting paid?
I think they should.
Absolutely, right?
Yep. And I'll tell you why.
Because you say $40 million.
Yeah, we'll go. We can jump around on this thing, but I don't think it's. I think it's evil. Between the NCAA and my other feelings on the government and how they treat people. I don't think it's right that they use their names for these games. They make all this money, and the treatment of them sometimes for their span in career. An NFL player is, if you get a chance, it's 2.5 years. I think the other thing you get, and I was very conscientious about this to educate my son on it. I said, my family's had a great life. We've built a great company, and we're good parents. But I said, when you get to college, you're going to have kids from all different venues. Some from lots of money, some from middle, some from nothing. And we're all people, so we know how to treat people, and life's not fair. But I said that it's tougher on some of them. Just you're on a budget. Now they say they give them more money, and they do. They get per diem. They get a lot more money than we used to get, but it's relative. Cost of living is expensive, and the college athlete, whether it's just football or any of the sports, people forget it's 9-10 hours a day of sports. And where do you fit your studies in and be a good student, right? You don't have, if you're just a student, you have the classes and that's it. And if you choose to work, so there's some real challenges there. So I think when these stigmas come out on athletes and say, oh, so-and-so screwed up or there was a problem, there's always some people in this planet that get misguided and things happen. But people that are athletes, they're very disciplined typically, and they're structured. And if you can follow that structure, it will catapult you into other things. And so
who was the quarterback that got first-round draft pick to the Browns that screwed up? What was his
Manziel.
Manziel, Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
Very, very gifted young man.
So there's always a Manziel, right?
Yeah, I don't know much about him. My understanding is that he, actually, my assistant graduate offensive line coach, he was coaching for them as the offensive line coach, and just said the guy had amazing feet. Talent's common. We know that. There's billionaires underneath bridges if we want to go find them. It's how you channel it and what you do with it. But
There must be a lot of money under the Burnside Bridge.
there's probably a lot, and some of them that have just bad circumstances. But to go back to what you said, so that second year I sat out, and I went to Coach James and said, hey, I want to move to offensive line. And I said, I'll be your best offensive lineman. I'm in better shape. I'm
And you
more
were
fit.
playing defensive line
Yeah,
before.
I was like Rocky. I said, I will be the best. And he said, I'll think about it. And gave me that look, and he was only about 5'8", but it felt like he was 8 foot tall, and you never wanted to be in his office. And as a senior, I wanted to go to this. So at one time I thought about that second year. Let's talk about the tough times and the good times. I thought about, geez, it's not going very good. Maybe that's something what I want to do. Everybody does. You go through it. And I took about a 3-day break. And I remember he called me and he said, I think you're missing a big chance to make a lot of money. Signing bonus then was $400,000 or $500,000. And he said, I think you'll, and just the doors that'll open. So came back, and I'll never forget, my dad was very strict and very stern. I mean, the Kirkland men took macho to a whole new level. And and my mom was always like, hey, we got to remember to be humble. You got these gifts, But I said this at my dad's funeral. I said, well, I got to walk back in that locker room, 160 guys in there. And he said, who gives a shit what people think? You got to face yourself, because in 100 years, we're all going to be gone. So I did, became a 3-year starter, captain of the Rose Bowl team, all Pac-10, got drafted. Went to the Bills, went to Super Bowl.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
How the Kevin Costner movie about the draft?
Yeah.
Is that pretty accurate?
I think he portrayed it pretty good. I think he did a pretty good job of the moving and shaking that goes on behind the scenes, and gambling on players and the last-minute trades. I think that's a pretty good depiction. And I think it goes on in most sports. I mean, there's a lot of last-minute changes based on money and salary caps, and probably even more now.
The baseball one with Billy Bean with the A's.
Yeah, with
That's a great show. Oakland.
Yeah, where
Brad Pitt.
He's sitting there and they're
Moneyball.
Yeah, Moneyball.
It's
And
great.
he's going back and forth, and he's like, fire him, hire him, fire him. They're just calling people trying to
Yeah.
make deals left and right with other managers. We'll give you a Pepsi machine.
Right.
So when it came to draft day, did you know that you were going to get drafted, or was there anxiety that you weren't going to get drafted?
No, I knew I was going to get drafted. You just don't know when, and you don't know how high, and I thought I'd go higher than I did. I was supposed to. So the third to fifth best guard in the country at the time. But just getting the opportunity and getting drafted. So you get drafted. Buffalo was a great franchise.
What round did you get drafted in?
11th round. And great place to go. I played for 3 great teams. I played for Buffalo, played for Tampa, and I played for Denver. And I always go back to some of the people that I played with, which were great people. And you know, the quarterbacks, Jim Kelly, great man, great guy.
Oh, yeah.
Great guy. Treated the rookies great. At Tampa, Vinny Testaverde, great guy. And John Elway, who's a great business leader now. I think everything he's done has been pretty successful, from his car dealerships, putting his name on them or owning them, and then to running the Broncos franchise. And none of that surprises me.
He's done a really good job running that franchise too.
Oh,
I think.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, he's got a plan. Most of those quarterbacks and offensive linemen have a plan.
The reason I don't
Gotta know the plays. They're smart.
And the reason I don't really like NBA is because players move from team to team so much, and we're seeing that now in a lot of the NFL. But what I love about John Elway is he's a Broncos guy,
Yeah.
lifer,
Oh, yeah.
and dynasty, and I mean he's there, and I love that about him. Is that
He came out of Port Angeles, right up here.
I didn't know that.
Right.
Well, and even like Peyton Manning. I mean, he was solid with the Colts.
That was a great move for them. And had a little chip on his shoulder. He didn't feel real good about the way they treated him, and
Yeah.
had a lot of life left in him. And what a role model! All those Manning boys. I mean, you can't get better than those guys.
So to go back to the draft a little bit, did you know that you were going to Buffalo? Were you?
No, I didn't know. You find out later, and the guy that drafted me, he was a Husky in the 70s, Bob Ferguson, really cool guy. And so he drafted me. And, it's a network. A lot of those guys know who you are and where you're from. And years later, I'm taking my kid to football camp up at PLU. And one of the guys there for PLU, it was their camp they're putting on. My son was 12 then. He said, "This is Ferguson." And he says, "Yeah, that's my Uncle Bob that drafted you." I remember you, Dean. I was just a little kid. That was kind of cool.
I bet.
Yeah, it's neat.
So had you been in New York before?
I hadn't. So, especially upstate, it's much different if you've been to New York. I presume, have you?
No, I've been all around it, but not.
So I've been to New York. Now I have all over it. But upstate's a little bit like the Northwest here.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah.
So when you were drafted to the Bills, did you have an image in your head of upstate, or did you have an image in your head of New York City?
More kind of New York City. You're 18 and hadn't really traveled around that much at all. I mean, my kids have been everywhere. I look at the opportunities they've had. I hadn't really been anywhere except Disneyland once, and that was the only vacation we'd ever been, our only place. So when I got there, but I wasn't disappointed. It was a blue-collar area. Bethlehem still was there. You could go up to Canada, to Niagara. It's on the lake, and the snow was great. And the people don't miss a lick. If it snowed, everybody's got a snow plow on their Ford pickup or GMC, and that was a side job. And they don't fret about snow up there. They're prepared for it.
One of my favorite players of all time is Marshawn Lynch, and he doesn't talk
amazing.
a lot.
He's tough.
I like him. He's tough. He's a great player. Extremely fun to watch.
Oh yeah.
But I just love how gangster that guy is.
I
mean, he is gangster to the bone. And if you YouTube, I think it was an ESPN special, one of the few specials where he got interviewed, when he talked about getting drafted to Buffalo. He's like, "Man, I thought I was going to New York and
I saw that one.
clubs and city and Jay-Z." And then he's like, "I got off the plane and there was snow. I ain't know nothing about no snow." And it's the funniest video.
Him and his Skittles. So at that camp, this is kind of funny. So there was a guy named Lawyer Malloy, amazing football player, came out of the University of Washington. And I'm friends with Lawyer. I mean, all the Huskies kind of know each other. And Lawyer played maybe 13 years. He was at Patriots and then finished with the Seahawks. So both Lawyer and Marshawn were at the camp. And they had just come up with the Zenith helmet, which was the new helmet. It looked really space age. And so my son's got the latest, greatest helmet, and Marshawn grabs it and thinks, "What in the hell is this thing?" It's like a contraption. Now the NFL teams, some of them have them there, but it was really funny. So
what's he like in person?
Just like he's like when you see him on TV. I see him on this show, and I can't think about it, what the name is. These guys out of Salt Lake that build these, retro rod monster truck kind of things. Have you ever seen that?
I think so.
Yeah, and
Is,
he's
is it
on that.
is it the Diesel Brothers?
Diesel Brothers.
Yeah, they're so good.
Oh, and he's been on that. He's so funny on that. They built him some custom buggy, and it's pretty cool.
The fish tank guys tanked. They did a fish tank for him too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, put beast mode in the tank.
I think he's where he should be at the Raiders now, right?
Well, he's got it tattooed on his chest, Oakland.
So he has to be there.
So he has to be
He has to be there. He owns it.
So I'm trying to hit all the controversial NFL topics. What about concussions, and what about helmets?
You know, I would say that it's a real deal. I mean,
Have you had any
you know,
long-term effects?
No, I was messed up way before this. So I'm all right, so. It's just in the blood, in the genes. I think there are a lot of individuals that have had issues from it. I think it's a real thing, and it's something that they're trying to clean up, and it's something to be taken seriously. The practices now are way different than they used to be. You know, when college was always, I mean, we would just crash it. I mean,
Just full bore.
under the tower in front of Coach James, 9-on-7, the collisions and that. And we had Ettman and, you know, James Clifford and Hoffman and Andy Mason and Jeff Balcoa, and we just, Lincoln Kennedy, we would crush each other. But I think the practices have toned down at the college level. And when you get to the pros, it's much less even. It was then, and it's much less now because you're paying guys. You can't afford to get them hurt. But they don't practice like they used to. You just can't. You can't do it. And I think
Kind
it's
of
a
like
good
fighters.
yeah.
Sparring is becoming less and less popular for some of these big fighters,
You
as they
can't-
don't like to spar before a
You
fight.
can't beat the hell out of each other like that. You just can't do it.
And does that come across on the field, having not practiced that with those hard hits?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I used to say when I was wrestling, you can't get better at something, baseball, wrestling, ping pong, unless you do it. Repetition.
Well, just the fear
Live.
of getting hit, right?
Live, right?
Yeah.
Live. Trying to hit a baseball, you go out and train yourself, and you stand there when a ball's coming at you 90 miles per hour, or you go out on the mat and we wrestle, or you go out and play basketball. Shoot balls, but actually play with somebody guarding you. There's a big difference in doing it very sterile and doing it while it's live. And I do think that does affect them, but I think they do other stuff. You know, I notice with the college football now, it's kind of year-round with little mini breaks, and I think it's a good thing because it's always on their mind. We used to be able to, you know, we were like cats on a heartburn. Come June, we were gone, and then we'd come back. And I don't think that, looking back in retrospect, was probably as good. It worked, and we won, but I think it's better now, and more conditioning. The weight training's different. We used to just pound the weights. I think it's more of the plyometrics and conditioning and things like that now to be athletic.
What about your thoughts with like children's and youth football? Like my son's 8,
Yeah.
and he's a tank for his age.
Right.
I mean, he weighs almost as much as I did my freshman year of high school.
Well, kids are getting bigger,
And
too.
he's going into the 3rd grade, and I'm looking at him, and he's just strong as heck for his age.
Is your wife tall?
She's about 5'7", 5'8", but she's so strong. So he's getting both of kind of the best of both of our genes.
Yeah.
But it makes me nervous to let him play football because with, you know, just what's going on.
I would say this. I didn't feel that way. We played the Pop Warner and the CYO, and we're competitive. And my daughter played soccer all the way through. You can get hurt doing anything. I mean, we trip in the parking lot. But I know a lot of people are weary of that. But I don't think so. I think it's pretty controlled. I think they do a good. I think those leagues, for the most part, do a good job. I think the biggest thing you have to be careful about as a parent is no matter what your kid's chosen field of endeavor is, sports for all of us end someday. That you don't take it so serious that they're a pro at 8 or 10 or 12 or
Yeah.
15, and let them play all sports. Let them have some fun.
Let them have fun.
Oh
with the
yeah.
kids,
I mean,
right?
I never coached. I'm a life coach to my kids, and I tried to be objective, but teach them the I can with an exclamation, I will with an exclamation. I think manifest in your thoughts become your reality, and don't let anybody take it from you. But the physical part of it, I think it's controlled enough that there's safety measures. So.
What would happen if they took a lot of the padding or a lot of the impact resistance out of the helmets? Would, especially linemen, would they hit less hard?
No.
It's kind of like in MMA.
There'd be more injuries.
There'd be more
It'd be
injuries.
back to putting your helmet in your pocket. I just think it's a bad idea. Yeah, I do.
Because that's one of the common arguments, right? Is,
Yeah.
well, give them less padding and then they won't hit as hard.
Well, I mean, you look at those rugby players over in Australia
No
and
way.
stuff.
They're tenacious.
They still hit just as hard.
Brutal.
Those guys are crazy.
I call blow. I don't. Whoever came up with that theory, I disagree. I just don't. I think it's. Look, I mean, when you're playing sports, even basketball or other sports, and you're strong and you're powerful and you're moving, and you get impact, and you're going 110%, and that's what you should do.
Your
Things can
adrenaline's
happen.
pumping,
I just don't see how you could say, "Oh, I'm going to go 50% because I have less padding." I don't believe it.
What other football questions? What about the changes to the field goals this last season?
Don't like it. I don't like that, and I don't like the talk about.
You don't think it's better that it's harder to make an extra point?
I think it is, but I guess those poor kickers, and they're an important part.
I was going to ask, are kickers football players?
In my mind, they are.
Do they get treated like that by all players, or did you see discrimination towards kickers?
Well, they damn well do when they make the decision when their kick defines a game, right?
I think that's probably got to be such a tough role because you're the kicker and you don't get a lot of shine.
Hey, we used to laugh. When we were in
You
college.
get shine when you either miss or you make it.
When we were in college, we'd be out there grinding it out. That's miserable, and you're just dead and all bruised up. And then the media tech guys for us, they'd scan over and they'd be laying on the track pits, sleeping or something, or working out, pumping out. We'd be like, "What? I'm gonna kill those guys," but they're part of the team, And then you go to the kicking. This talk about getting rid of the kickoff return.
Yeah.
The velocity of.
Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think it's a bad idea.
To get rid of the kickoff
And
return?
I we're not going to get political here, but when you hear President Trump and people talk about the ratings of football, it's because of that. It's all this feel-good stuff. I get it that they want to slow down the injuries, but you're going to slow down the excitement. I get it. We don't feed people to lions anymore either. We're smarter, but.
Well, you got a fair catch. I mean, you could wave it off.
Right, and that's what they try to do. I think it's this last Super Bowl. Wow. I mean, look how exciting, how many kickoffs there were in that game. There were a lot.
Well, and how exciting is it when a kickoff's returned
Oh,
for a
jeez.
touchdown? I mean, that's
It's amazing to watch somebody juke somebody up and down the field and run it back. And
Well, and usually they're running it back from like 109 yards.
right. And you're like, how does he do that? It's amazing. So I think it would take the zest out of it, the fun out of it.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's getting sucked out so much because I love watching football, and I love watching football with my friends. No matter what their political views are, it's a time to escape from that. And we're getting the
Sure.
politics are getting drawn into football, and it really pisses me off because that's my time to not think about politics. So we just had Claudia and Augustine Belladine on the podcast.
Bellandine.
And I have a certain opinion about the protest, but I really haven't let it bother me because I like watching football so much. And I take my boycotts very seriously, and I'm very selective because if I'm going to boycott something, I'm going to go full bore. So there's only a couple things that I boycott. And all my friends and family, a lot of them, turned off the TV this last season. And I didn't because I like watching that fantasy football. To me, it's one of my hobbies. It's a good time with the guys. It's good communication. It's so much fun that I didn't buy into the protests. But especially since if you watch Red Zone all day, you don't see a single national anthem, so you don't even know what's going on.
That's right. You just see, if you have the boxes on, you see boxes of Red Zone.
Yeah. So, but hearing their story of escaping Romania during the Cold War and what freedom means to them, and what the 4th of July, which is coming up, we have an awesome guest coming up for the 4th of July. Eric Post.
We do. Oh, you gave it away.
Well, it's out there now. Look him up on YouTube. He's got some great videos on what the American flag means to him and what American flag protesters and those kind of people mean to him. But hearing her story of coming, she escaped first, and then her husband followed her a couple years later, right, Ryan? Her first holiday on U.S. soil was the 4th of July. And she says every year on the 4th of July, she cries.
Well, they had never seen fireworks in their whole life.
Yeah, they don't have fireworks in communist
And so
countries.
the symbolism of, the fireworks and everything just basically brought her to tears.
I mean, well, they escaped from a horrible country. But I asked her what the national anthem means to her, and it really changed my perspective a little bit, because I get goosebumps whenever I hear the national anthem. We're big hockey fans. We are season ticket holders of the Portland Winterhawks, and even at a junior hockey, when the chief of police comes out and sings the national anthem or whatever it is, I always get goosebumps. But what it means to her is completely different, and so.
And none of us can sit here and say we know exactly what it's like for her.
No. And it did make me passionate about what's going on now. And where I was avoiding this whole protest thing because I didn't want it to ruin my sport that I like. But you never know who's in that crowd of 15,000 people. And there might be somebody that escaped Romania during the Cold War who loves this country and loves her freedom more than any of us can understand growing up where we did. And so it did change my perspective. I didn't mean to totally go off on that, but
it's amazing, right?
I can imagine your opinion on it, but what do you think about this? Do you think it's going to hurt ratings? Do you think how Trump got involved and how the commissioner got involved and made some changes this year with these fines? I mean, where does that line of freedom of speech, freedom to protest, and being an employee for a company, where are those drawn?
I think, first of all, I don't feel racism towards anybody. Maybe just people that don't want to work. I'm friends with all makes of people. And some of my closest friends were my brothers that I played with. When I look back, we share. There's things you share, but when I think it's disrespectful not to stand. I think the opportunities that all of us, no matter what color you are, afford in this country. When you look at what we have, and we don't see it from the eyes and perspectives of somebody like that from Romania, you just forget. You're unappreciative of what you have here. But that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to that. I think we should, and I think if you're an employer, it should be mandated. I think the people shouted out and said, the masses, they didn't like it. The ratings showed it. Now, like Trump or not, he's right. He was right. He was right in his prediction that the ratings would fall. And guess what? At the end of the day, they succumbed to it. They did. They had a chance to stop it early on, and they waited, and then they softballed it and said, oh, we're going to make you do it now. Guess why? Because it was the almighty what? The dollar. It's business.
So there's coaches out and owners that are saying, we'll just pay the fine. Go ahead and protest.
I think it's messed up that they say it. I mean, anybody can be obstinate and say anything, but I think we're focusing on the wrong thing here.
Yeah, I think the biggest.
What do you mean by that?
We spend so much time focusing on this choice of it's my right to take a knee or it's my this or that. No, you're paid a lot of money to go out there and perform. You're a performer, really, for a business, and people are paying to see it. They don't have time to hear about your personal wants or don't wants like some prima donna. Go out there and play and be respectful. And thank goodness that we can't change history. We can only change going forward. And we're doing it as a country. But let's don't make a mockery out of things, and let's don't say, oh, I'll just pay it if not. It's just a way to kind of be antagonistic, and I don't like it.
Do you think that, and you don't have to answer this, but do you think that there's the NFL as an entity is biased? Because one of the things I never understood is why one player can modify his uniform, but the Dallas Cowboys couldn't modify their helmets out of respect for the Dallas shooting.
Yeah, I do. I think NFL wants what the NFL wants, and the owners are going to speak. You know, if you're an owner and you own a couple $1 billion franchise, you're going to protect it like any company, and you're going to make decisions, and your mouthpiece is going to be that commissioner. So yeah, I do. They'll say they're not, but they're going to, right?
Do you see competition coming out for the NFL? Do you see another league? There's talks of
Yeah, kind of interesting. Years ago, you had the XFL, and I think the time's right. I think it's kind of interesting. You know, of course, Trump never has liked the NFL because of when he owned the Generals and he sued them, and Vince McMahon and some other guys are trying to take it on. And I actually got to tell you, I think it's a good thing. Competition's great, and I think it would allow there. You know, you got rosters that are 60-some people. You know, too deep, plus your reserves. You know, if you're 44 on the active, and then you got your guys that are on the practice squad that don't travel, and guys that are on injured reserve. I actually think this would be a venue for a lot of people that don't play in the NFL. And then look at baseball's got different leagues. I think that it's the time's there now with all the media and satellite TV and everything that's going on and computers. I think there's a venue that would allow, I think all the people that would get a chance to play, it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point just now. I mean, they could stream it on Amazon or YouTube and screw the TV networks, and they could run it just streaming.
Right.
Right. So that's
cool.
where it's going.
And that's why they probably don't want it either.
Yeah.
But I do think it's going to go there. I think it's got a chance this time.
Dean, what about being successful in football, in family, in business is important to you? Why is it important? What about being successful?
What it means to Dean Kirkland?
Yeah. Why is that important? Why is achieving things,
or just to people?
To you, why is
me.
achieving things and being successful important?
I think I get up every day with a burning desire, and like I said, things that craft your life, kind of like wind beating against a rock, or that may not be always perfect. You know, my parents were great parents. They were divorced when I was young, and that was difficult. I mean, we all have difficult things we went through. But I think looking back at that, wanting to show to my father that I was worthy, that I'll be something and be something important, those things motivated me like no tomorrow, and drove me. They used to say I had the drive of 100 people, and I think everybody's different. And that, for me, to get up every morning and do what people say can't be done, not ego, just gets my juices going. Because I do think that too many people are cloaked with it can't be done. So anybody, it doesn't matter who you are, man, woman, or orangutan, you can do anything if you want it. Now, I don't think we're all equal. I think we should all have equal opportunity. There's things that Ryan can do that I can't do, or Jane can do that I can't do, or Cody can do that I can't do. But there's things I can do too. We just want the chance. And I think that goal setting, and then the secret to me is manifesting. You have a goal, you write it down, you see it, and you say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And a lot of people don't really, they don't tap that brain power in them. How are you going to do it? And then when things don't go right in your life, how do you handle that adversity? Do you channel it, and do you use it as a launching pad? And that is what really is the catalyst to make you become something. And I've over and over in my life have set goals. And I sought out mentors that were high-powered people that kind of took me under their wing. And when somebody does that, it's a real boost to you. And we can talk about who some of those people were. And then the adversity, when things seem the darkest, how are you going to get through it? How are you going to do that?
So
right?
I want to talk about adversity, but before I do, I want to get specific on your goal setting, because this is something that Ryan and I work together.
Sure.
And we're both big goal setters, right, Ryan?
Mm-hmm.
And we set goals different ways. And I want to get your opinion on kind of how you set your goals. So When I set a goal, I set a goal really high,
Okay.
and maybe higher than what's really achievable. And then if I fail, the way I look at that is if I fail by a small percentage, then I probably did better than I would if I would have set a goal that was more achievable. Ryan works for him opposite. He sets a goal that is achievable, maybe at the top end. Would you say, Ryan?
Yeah, achievable, and I hope to go over it.
Yeah. So he wants to set a realistic goal and then exceed it. So when you're setting your goals, and a lot of them are very specific, like making varsity. So there's not a lot of fluctuation,
But,
right?
but there's lots of little goals in between there that I didn't expand on that have to be done to get you there, right?
Absolutely.
So when you're setting your goals, are you that analytic? Well, maybe business would be a better example. When you're setting a business goal, how do you handle that?
I think they're all relative. If you're an athlete and your goal is to make varsity or get a scholarship or make league honors, whatever that venue is, there are certain things that you have to do. If you're a volleyball player, you have to train all the time. You have to be better at your sets. You got to be in the best condition. You got to get your leg strength up. You got to eat right. You got to be fit. You got to know where you should be. Business is the same way. With business, I'm chairman of a development company, and we've been doing it 25 years. And so we always have to buy money. You got to buy capital. You have to be looking around the corner for the next deal. If you don't have a new idea, you're out of business. The next main and main, the next stoplight. And then what are people going to attract to? You're thinking about what's going to bring them in, what's the barrier to impact that's going to help you make this a success and breathe. You look at all those things, and then your people, the people around you. Machinery never lets you down. It's typically people, and you can pay people a lot of money, but money alone will not keep the secret. It will not keep people content and keep them by your side. I think it's really esteem, and so how people feel, how Cody feels, how Ryan feels, how Dean feels. If you don't have a mission statement to get up every morning, and a purpose, you just wither. And so,
Well, and you used the word with me a lot on our phone call last night and this morning. Passion, right?
and so the goals, you're a lost leader without goals. If you don't have goals, and I kind of probably do it more. I've got the big goal, and then lots of little goals in between there, on my path of stepping stones and breadcrumbs. And you hope that that path, sometimes you get off that path and you know that it's not happening as fast as you want it to be, but if you're dedicated to your purpose, your mission statement, I call it, you can get there. I look back 10 years ago, we were doing $10 million deals, and now we got one deal alone's $100 million. We've got a couple $100 million in construction going. Anything's achievable.
So did you have that vision at
I
that
did.
point?
I did.
For 10 years, I want to go from $10 million projects to $100 million.
Yeah, billion. And I wanted to build great projects and when you build a project, it's a monument. You don't want people going by and saying, hey, Cody and Dean built that and they really messed that up. It's not unattainable to do it. It's just how you get there. And you can't get there in day one. And you got to know that there's going to be some left turns and right turns, and sometimes very uncomfortable. And
So when you say uncomfortable, what's some of the diversity or some of the most successful people I've talked to say, everyone always wants to know about my successes, and I told you this last
Yep.
night, but nobody ever asks me about my failures.
sure,
So that trying to change the way my conversations are that you've had to face or some of the failures, maybe more on the business side than the football side, because we talked about a few of those.
So it's easy to talk about successes. And if I talked about successes, it would be my kids. I go on and on. They're smart, doing what they're supposed to do. They're well on their way, and not arrogant, hardworking, honest. And the business stuff speaks for itself. We've built an amazing company. We care very much about the projects we built. Got 5 hotels we've done. And go on and on. Lots of retail. We built everything: mini storage, light industrial, apartments. But when I look at the stuff that's crafted me, I was first to graduate in my class from University of Washington. Good with numbers, very ambitious. Got in the securities business as a young guy. What we used to do is we'd go out, and I didn't golf. I'd hunt and fish with guys. We'd take clients. That's what we did. That was my job. It was a dream job. And
so when was this? When did
this
you?
is in the 90s,
Okay.
right about the time I'm playing pro football, working as an intern for a firm in Portland. And
So you were working as an intern while you were
yep,
in the NFL?
Yep. And so for
Crazy.
life after
Is
football.
that common?
Yeah, I think some guys do. They should.
So they start their life after football while they're in the NFL?
I met the owner of the firm when I was in college, and he took me in, and I was studying stocks, bonds, real estate, mezzanine capital, venture capital, all the things that were of interest to me. I became kind of a color person, color guy. I was out raising capital. I raised about $500 million. And the owner of the firm had loaned a bunch of money to the guy that runs Fat Burger today, a guy named Andy Weeder. He's very successful again. He kind of took a rough and tumble. And so I went through kind of a little Martha Stewart deal where the government came in and said, hey, these trips are, no. And we fought it. And I said, well, hey, the attorneys approved it, and they paid for it all. And
So you got your hand slapped for?
yeah, I got my hand slapped for what's called the Gratuities Act. And
Can you bring that up, right? Gratuities Act?
yeah, it's U.S. Title 18, Section 1954. And so based on that, it was, if you watch The Aviator, when they went after Howard Hughes
Yeah.
for being a war profiteer, he was whining and dining war constituents, and that's what people do. I mean, it goes on all the time. Doesn't mean it's right
In
or
all
wrong.
industries.
All industries. And so they made a big deal about all these trips, and then they charged us for giving Colorado Rockies tickets and Broncos tickets, which I played for the Broncos. So here's how life works, though. I was very successful at what I did. I made a lot of money. I was a young kid then. I was making over $1 million a year, and we were flying on a private jet. And later on, I buy my own private jet. I have one now. I mean, we don't. But it sells the sizzle. And so when things go bad, heads got to roll. And so we spent a couple $1 million fighting the government. I hired Bob Bennett, who was Bill Clinton's attorney in the Lewinsky scandal.
Yeah.
And put on the fight. And at that time, there was a guy that's an entrepreneur that's very dear to my heart named Del Smith. He was the founder and CEO of Evergreen International Aviation. He was the guy that brought the Spruce Goose up here, self-made billionaire, came from nothing. And he took me under, and so we fought this case. It took 7 years of my life, it felt like. At the end of the day, I decided we won the first case. It was thrown out. Second time around, they came back, and it was called complex law. Was my intent to make money? Was my intent to make money, or was it because of my love of my family, or was it because of the trips? And it was probably all three. And truthfully, I mean, who doesn't want to make money?
Yeah.
And my feeling was, if I would have been selling chiclets, I'd have been the best, or at Nordstrom selling shoes.
Yeah.
But it became very publicized, so I ended up getting 500 days for this. And
This is while you were in the NFL?
Yeah. We flew back to meet Michael Milken's advisors. That Michael Milken did the junk bond stuff for Steve Wynn and the casinos, and remember, he got a couple years.
Yeah.
And so I ate the pill, that's what I called it, and said, well, how are you going to recover from that? What are you going to do? My kids were very little then. And so I had been developing real estate on the side. I was a traveling sales guy working for these guys. So a lot of the equity people and the money people that believed in me, we had bought some properties and set out with a mission statement that we're going to do it and do it with our own company. I'm not going to work for somebody else and go through that.
So this is after the
Yeah,
fighting.
yeah.
So
it was never about really did we do it or not. It was about did the law allow it.
Yeah.
And it was like the Bible, 7 years of good, 7 years of bad.
So
and we're tougher for it.
Did you take a plea bargain, or did they find
No.
you guilty?
We
So
know.
you fought it.
First time they threw it out, we won. And they came back and charged it again.
And were both times in front of a jury or a judge?
Nope, bench trial, so judge. So he didn't want to go to a jury. Quite frankly, I think the only way to be candid is I was very concerned that the jurors might look at it and go, these guys are flying around on these highfalutin trips and jet setting. And
that was right during the .com bust.
Hunting in Africa and Argentina, and wow, come on. And so there were some decisions made, and that is where the chips laid. So then from there, you look at it and you're kind of your darkest hours. What are you going to do?
That had to be scary. So that's one of my biggest fears. My wife, I got so mad at her. We don't fight very often, but I don't remember what I was doing, but I said, I might end up in jail. And she goes, if you end up in jail, I'm not going to come bail you out. And I got so mad at her because I'm like, that's my biggest fear. Well, besides stairwells, that's one of my biggest fears is being thrown in jail. And I'm like, I can't believe you would say that you want to bail me out. So was it scary?
My wife and I have a long history of 33 years. We went to high school together. And so we rallied the forces and the troops, and I had good family support. My kids were very little. And I had financially done well. So it wasn't money they wanted. My fine was 10 Weatherby rifles, a barbecue, and a pair of binoculars. And so based on that, we got through it and never looked back.
Did you do all 500 days?
You did it.
And how did that affect your football career?
Didn't. I was retired and done at that
time.
You
were done at that
I was done. It was 6 years after that. So, and then I think...
So I know you probably don't want to talk about this, but I can't. My curiosity is...
No, it's okay. I actually do.
When you're in prison...
I think I want to talk about it.
You're an intimidating guy physically. Did that help you? What was it like?
No, I wouldn't say. I thought when we met Michael Milken's advisors, they just told us that there were a nonprofit group back there that had dealt with him. They knew him, and they just said, just go in there and do your thing and get out of there. So I studied 5 nights a week, and my wife and kids would come see me. It's like a military barracks. It's kind of an honor camp. You just go in, do it. When you're done, you leave. It's not a jail. And
so it's not like...
No, and then a lot of the people that were my business alliance people, the Evergreen guy and other people would come see me. And so I had a good support. It's just a time to reflect.
You saw the light at the end of the tunnel, though.
Oh, yeah. And I will tell you guys this, and you probably realize it, and you really find out who people are. I've said it, it's an old cliche, but it wasn't anybody that knows me and that's been around me knew that I would come through it on the other end bigger, better, in a better place. And that doesn't always mean financially, just everything. But the people that can't see it, they're the ones that go, and the people that are doubters, they always go, I don't know how he's going to do that or she's going to do that. And I think it's important because I don't think we're fooling ourselves. And you have to know it as you're in your 20s. You look at your goals as a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old and a 40-year-old and a 50-year-old. Everybody is going to face some kind of adversity. That may be health. That may be social. It may be your relationship and your family and your kids and your wife. It may be financial. You'll face something. Everybody. How are you going to handle it? And people that can handle adversity and believe deeply with conviction always come back bigger and better. And when I say bigger and better, they learn that there's going to be a smooth road eventually for them.
So is adversity something you can prepare for?
No, I think you can harness it, though. I think you harness it. I think that you don't see it. I think everybody talks about wisdom. I'm 50 now. I think you expect it. Always expect it. I always expect it. And then I don't create it, but if you have a little fight in you, I got the fight in me, then you're like, I know what to expect, and when it comes, we'll deal with it. And it could turn into something, but a lot of times if you're scared of it, it's the wrong thing. It's hard to do. It's almost like driving in the snow and wanting to put your brakes on, but the reality is you probably should step on the gas pedal sometimes. See, inverted. it's
And don't avoid taking risks, right?
Right.
Don't let that adversity scare you.
Because a lot of times, you know, here's a great example. Something in your life, you might be like, gosh, that didn't work out like I wanted it to. I'm just devastated. And you're like, wait a minute here. Another door may open here. And you just step back. I do it in business a lot. If I'm buying a piece of property, and it doesn't work out and I don't get it, I'm like, wait a minute here. It's take a step back, take a breath, and then something else opens up and it turns out better for you. I think sometimes taking that step back and realizing that it's not a setback, maybe it's a launching pad for something bigger.
Did that take you a while to get to that?
Yeah, it did. It did. It's
like almost like an emotional intelligence.
It is. It's being in touch with yourself, and it's hard for people to say, how is this adversity? But you kind of, if you've been through it a few times, I went through it in sports, kind of had some setbacks. Then you go through it in business, you had some setbacks. Wow, you can come out the other side and launch it to the moon. And I believe that. Typically, if you look back at things you went through, somehow it became something greater for you. The cosmic force line up,
I knew this was going to be a good podcast the moment I met you, because you and I are similar. When I was in your office, I saw that you had some stuff on the walls.
Oh, sure.
So talk a little bit about that. My wife got a new iPhone, and we share a iTunes account. And all of a sudden, I go to look for the picture I took the other night, and it's like Easter pictures from 2 years ago that are on the current timeline. So something happened, and I lost like 3 days worth of pictures.
That's all right. I'll get them for you again.
Yeah, get them.
So about the time I was dealing with Dale Smith from Evergreen Aviation back in some of these trials and tribulations we were going through in my young career, you meet like people, you attract them. It's cosmic force. I often say too that, you seek out people that you maybe as a boost to your ego or makes you that you want to be around. I always was impressed with the way he treated. I say, who's the most important person in the company? He'd say, my janitors, every time. And I always thought that was spot on and gracious, and he's right. I mean, it's like treating the waitress bad that brings your food, right? I mean, what do you want to do that for?
Yeah.
I mean,
that make you
they're
feel better?
busting their
They're
they're busting their butt for you, right?
Yeah.
And I always was amazed that he wasn't a guy that talked about. There's nothing wrong with talking about the financial aspects. Profit's not a dirty word, but he always talked about the big I's. I for idea, I for inspire. There's a guy that flew around, knew President Bush, flew him on his plane.
He was a pilot?
Well, no, he had his own airline. He had 200 planes. He had 200 offices worldwide. This guy was a mover and shaker. And so, and had $1 billion cash flow business. You sit around him and you listen to ideas, not bragging, and trying to make a difference in people's lives. And I think those things, when you're around people like that, it just kind of crafts you, and you see why. I mean, look, today we live in a world where everybody wants to pick up these phones and say, hey, look, here's the steak I'm eating, here's the car I'm driving, who cares? I mean, I think it's great. I love all my assets, cars, my plane, we have a jet, houses, that's all great. Now, I've met you guys, sat down with you, we've never talked about any, and we won't. It doesn't matter. I'm sure you guys live a great life too, and you hunt and you fish and you're successful business guys, but I think people are losing that one-on-one. As we sit here today and we just sit around this table and we're on your podcast, we're actually looking at each other in the eye. I don't know what the rest of the people are doing out there, but we're doing something powerful. I'm just looking at it as a casual conversation where we can talk about life and what crafts people and what makes people who they are. And I think these things that are on paper that you saw in my office or in my boardroom, the 80-20 rule, we all know about the 80-20 rule, sales call rule, winner versus loser, principles of Napoleon Hill. Those were given to me by Dale Smith. Those are cool things.
Very cool.
And there's a book, Think and Grow Rich by Clement Stone, and it's got Napoleon Hill's principles, and it quotes Dale Smith on page like 210. And those principles, one of them that I like, and it's true, you can look at somebody's work habits today, what they do every day. In 10 years, I can tell you what they'll be. You just can tell. I mean, you can tell. They're going to make it happen, right? And they're going to do it. And it's like you reap what you sow. Those things, the mastermind or woman alliance, people you surround yourself with, nobody's an island. Those principles, if you think about them, if you read them, you go, they're really true. They're true. It's not voodoo. I often say to my kids, I said, be a knight, be a Jedi. I say it all the time to them. And we've said it forever. Whatever you are, if you're going to be the best financer in the mortgage market, or the best athlete, or the best engineer, or the best developer, or the best banker, be a knight, be a Jedi.
Well, I say it all the time on this podcast. Everything you're saying speaks a lot to me, and a lot to the purpose of this podcast. Selfishly, I get to meet really cool people.
Oh, sure.
And I get to learn a lot from them.
Right.
Just like I do listening to other podcasts, Joe Rogan's, a lot of these big podcasts. I learn a lot. I may be sitting there working on a project and have it on the background, and I hear one thing, like maybe, for example, your story about serving the 500 days or getting injured in college, and the way you overcame that might be inspire me to come up with a new idea, or inspire me to stay late or try a little bit harder. And so that's why one of the reasons we're doing the podcast. The second reason is practicing the art of conversation. And what you said about your phone and people talking about their possessions and what they have, and I've said this a lot on the podcast, you can go down to, I did today, I went to a restaurant for lunch by myself, and was sitting there eating my hamburger and just listening to people talk. And most people, most of the time, generally speaking, it's two people sitting there talking about themselves to each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
it's funny when you sit back and you just kind of quiet and you're like a bystander and you hear it. It's very eye-opening.
And maybe it's because of social media. Who knows why? But people are losing that art. And so you don't have to have a podcast to do it. Go find somebody you want to get to know and go out to dinner, put your phones away, and talk. Because I feel like it's helped me a lot. Dealing with my clients, dealing with my family, being able to hold a conversation and be good at it and actually be interested in what somebody has to say.
I think, I often say we're becoming the planet Star Wars in a funny way. Drones and phones. And I mean, if you think about it,
Space
what will
Force.
sales calls be? I mean,
A Tesla car that parks itself
right.
in the garage.
I mean, you sit down with your family at dinner, and you want to have a discussion and talk about how the day is, and it's really addictive to want to pick that phone up. Other than picking it up as an example, nobody's been on their phones here, and we're not. We're on this podcast. But having said that, what's going to happen to human interaction? What's going to happen? When do people sit down? I think what's resonating to people, at least it is to me, and I believe I'm right, most people. Look, we all want someone that wears their confidence 5 feet in front of them. Not arrogant, but we want to root for that. We want to be inspired.
Most people.
Most people do. I do.
There's some people that are trying to kill that spirit,
that's right? That's right. And I think that's why I embrace talking about the good and the bad. I think it's phony if you don't.
Well, it was fun being in your office.
Oh, hell.
Just for those 20 minutes talking business.
Yeah.
It was fun just to see how confident you were.
Yep.
Excited, high energy. You obviously wanted to get to know us quickly.
Yep.
And it was a great 20 minutes. I walked away and I immediately started applying stuff from that conversation to my dealings with customers.
Well, it's you take away a feeling from people. You don't. But I think if people, I often say, and I'll go back to my kids. I say, whenever I sit down with people, meet with lots of bankers, then I have to talk about who I am and what we do, and I just kind of lay it out, the good and the bad, and this is how we're going to get it done from start to finish. And if you have any questions, ask them. Otherwise, I'm walking out that door, and you won't have a chance, because you just tell everything, because anybody can look up anything. This is your one chance to ask. And I think for anybody that wants to be something, I used to, when I was playing at the Huskies and in the pros, I'd talk to grade schools about setting goals. I think that it's everything. I think if you have a mission statement and you want to be something, you can do it. And we need people like that all the time. That doesn't mean we don't need the person that doesn't want to do the grandiose, but your goal doesn't have to be as big. It's big in your eyes. It doesn't have to be financial. It may be a goal to have a better relationship with your spouse. It may be with your kids. Like I said, it may be with your relatives. It may be just to be a better community leader. Goals are goals, right?
Right. You know, it's, what do you think, Ryan? What do you think about all this?
No, I mean, I totally agree.
Because, I mean, for the people that don't know you, your name is one of the most well-known names in Vancouver. Like you said, you have a lot of buildings that are monuments.
Yes.
And you're working on a big one.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and go to the screen capture here.
So this is the biggest project you've worked on.
It is. You know, we developed the 192nd blocks, which is about 18 blocks, 13 on one side and 5 on the other, and they're nice-looking buildings.
So how tall is this building?
We've moved down to the waterfront here. This is a cool building. It's Block 4. In my 50 years as a resident here in Clark County and Vancouver, this development down there where now you can get to the waterfront because it was blocked by the railroad tracks.
Yep.
You know, with Graymore started the master plan years ago, and then they've sold off blocks to different developers, and they're down there doing a great job on their buildings. We've started last week. We broke ground. The building is 311,000 square feet, roughly. 100 of it's the Kirkland Tower, which is 12 and a half stories with retail on the bottom. And it's a condo tower, and it's got a mirrored blue glass that we found from the Fontainebleau in Vegas. It's really, really nice looking glass. And then the Indigo Hotel. And the Indigo Hotel, it used to be Crown Plaza under International Hotel Group. Now the Indigos there's about 60 of them around the country, and every one of them depicts a story from the neighborhood. So I went back to New York and looked at the Indigo there, and they had their bar and theme was Mr. Purple. Mr. Purple was an African-American philanthropist. Our theme has to do with the old shipyard. Our restaurant's called Stanifer's Blue. Our rooftop bar, Esther Short, which we all recognize that name. She was under the Land Provision Act, and a lot of the streets around there. And the roundabout to the southeast of this right here shown in the picture, it literally is named after Esther Short. That's Esther Short Street. And the first hotel ever owned in Vancouver was in 1854, and our rooftop bar is called 1854.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
So the hotel's 8 stories next to the tower. It's 138 rooms, and there's 17,000 feet of retail, which is really exciting, and there'll be different eateries and some financial businesses in there. Kind of cool.
So what's it been like dealing with a city?
You know, Vancouver's great, and I'm not saying that just championing it. I've got 2 hotels going in Hillsborough right now, 2 stay bridges they're big hotels. They're 20 million apiece, and one's next to the Top Golf off the exit over there, and then there's another one over by the stadium. And we build them and own them. The Hillsborough's good, but I would say this: Vancouver is really business friendly. You know, the other thing that's kind of nice is most of the people that are there, you went to high school with them or grew up with them, and they've got a group of people that care down there, and they're very proactive, and it's never spring-loaded in the no position. We can't get this done. You know, I think for years, Vancouver always had the little jokes, Vantucky, and we've all heard it. But I have to say, first of all, living over here, it's great tax incentive.
Well, and for the people that aren't familiar with where we're at, so Vancouver is on the southwest end of Washington, right across the Columbia River from Portland.
Right.
And so you have a state, Oregon, with no sales tax but has a state income tax.
Right.
You have Washington that has no state income tax but does have a sales tax.
And geographically, I think it's the 3rd largest county now. So Clark County, which houses Vancouver, is about 500,000 people now. Multnomah, which is in Portland across the river, which does have the tax, is about 750. And then you you go Washington County, and then I think it's Clark, we're third, and then I think it's Clackamas is fourth. So in that metro of counties, I mean, and it's got great schools, as we know. Lot more schools than when we were younger, with Union and
lot
Camas
more.
becoming,
They're
big.
like university campuses.
Yeah, it's amazing. And low crime, it's a great place to live and raise your family.
So doing a project like this in Vancouver, in a city, a lot of cities on the I'm all over the country, but in the news right now, it's Seattle and San Francisco are dealing with these massive homeless problems.
Yeah.
And I used to work on the first floor of 400 East Mill Plain.
Oh, sure.
And so I would.
Is that in the, is that?
It's in-
Oh, I know where that
Yeah,
was.
it's
Well,
over-
that was at the Mill Plain
Yeah.
one. That's Ed Pizza's old deal.
uh,
Yeah,
it-
he was the Red Lion guy. He built all those. The mirrored glass, really nice looking.
No, it's the Angelo building, right?
Oh, the Angelo one.
Right off
Okay.
of I-5.
Okay,
there.
okay.
But I watched over 3 years the homeless problem become more and more prevalent.
Oh, sure.
And I mean, Vancouver seems to be doing a pretty good job. You go into Portland. We went to a restaurant about a month ago to a part of Portland that we hadn't been to in a long time, and it was Mother's Bistro. We went there before a concert, and it was shocking how many businesses have left that part of downtown.
Well, it's
And
not.
abandoned buildings, and then the amount of homeless.
Oh,
So I
it's
mean,
terrible. It's sad.
Yeah.
And it's sad for the people that are the homeless people, and we do have a duty to help them, and we spend a lot of money on other things and waste a lot of money, but it's hard for the business owners too to have that next to their businesses too. So you're empathetic to that too. It's hard to run your business, and so there's got to be some change. There is some homeless in Vancouver too, downtown. You see them.
that seems to be getting. I mean, from what I see, it seems to be getting worse.
But in Portland, there are some massive tent cities.
Yeah, on the freeway.
Yeah,
Oh,
even
it's-
just heading
it's
down,
terrible. It's
even
terrible.
heading south on
And I
I-5.
think,
Yeah.
I asked the other day, I thought Vancouver used to be the fourth largest city in the state of Washington. I think it may be third now. It used to be Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane, then Vancouver. And so often, as for your viewers, gave a kind of a geographical idea where we're at. So often people mistake us for BC. And
All
we're
the time.
Vancouver, USA.
But it's a great community. It is.
Well, it's been a good time sitting there talking to you, getting to know you a little bit better. It's always good to know the movers and shakers, and you're definitely one of them. Do you get a sense of pride from your standing in the community and from being a mover and shaker? And was that part of your achievement? Is that part of your goals? Is achieving a certain? I was going to have a joke when he came on. I was going to have a little Monopoly guy and say I found a picture of you on the internet.
I love being an entrepreneur. I love it because every day and every deal, I like deals, and every deal is creating something new and having the vision. And you create it. You go out and you find a piece of property and it's a green field, and then what am I going to do with it? And then you forecast financials and you decide, well, should this be a retail center or a hotel or apartments? And we've got about 300 units we're building and apartments and around right now too, and some up on 192nd. And I look at that, but I'm going to go back to it. There is a sense of pride because you're building something that's going to be around for a long time and leaving your footprint. So yeah, I would agree with that. I think there is, especially this is our town, and we all have a duty to each other to take care of it. It's like we have a duty to take care of Mother Earth. I wouldn't say I'm a green person, but I'm damn well earth friendly. I don't litter. On some things I'm green, but I think, yeah, we have a duty to the community, and we want to do a good job and care very much.
So how can people find out more about your projects and get in contact with your company?
If you're interested, you can go to, you can look up Kirkland Development, or you can go to kirklandtower.com and look up the project, which is, like I said, it's a $100 million project, probably the most expensive single project built by an entrepreneur in Vancouver, just by a private citizen. I'm just a private citizen, which I say that over and over because it's our deal, and that is a big deal. And We think it's going to change the way that people look at Vancouver. There's only so much waterfront property, and I think us and the other developers down there will do our job. And it'll be amazing with the park and everything.
And it's
on.
bringing big business to Vancouver, and the CDRC is a big part of that.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. It's great. It's great. You know, all of us get affected by it. Your guys' financial business does. We do. All the eateries do. And I think that, you know, it's going to be pretty cool down there when they have concerts down that amphitheater and park. It'll be great.
They're going to put an amphitheater down there?
Yeah, so they've got, you know, if you go down there now, you haven't been down there, so it's fenced off. They've got all the benches down there, and you can see it. It's pretty neat.
That's cool. I actually have a quick question. Typically, in successful people, they never seem to truly have an exit strategy, because usually most successful people
That's right.
are driven until the day they're dead.
No, we'll save that for another. The guy that kind of mentored me, he didn't really. He didn't. You know, it was the deal. It was getting up every morning for his company. I often say I don't believe in retirement. I've never, you know. I like to go to my son's games.
Yeah.
I like to hunt, and I like to work, and that's it. And so, yeah, I haven't thought about it. You know, my kids have interest in the business. My daughter just graduated, and she's going to work again this year with us for about a year, and then take her LSAT and go to law school. And probably not to be a practicing attorney, probably just so she can be more well-read, you know, and understand leases and contracts and banking. I tell every young person they should do two things: take a great public speaking class and get very comfortable sitting in front of people and talking, or standing up on a stage and talking to people. And the other one is to read a balance sheet, being able to read assets and liabilities, i.e. net worth, and a P&L. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter if you just want to, you know, buy furniture or a house or a car. You'll be more in tune to what I call the sneakies in the fine print are. Mm-hmm. But no, my succession plan is to, one neat thing about development, I guess, if I wanted to retire and you don't have to build any more buildings or develop any properties, but you know, I'd like to see potentially, you know, one of my children or both decide that and I think they do, I want to be in the business. I like the business because it's something that you can always do, and it's something you can do with your mind. You know, physically, we're all going to wear out someday. And, you know, I've got a son that he's a Sunday kid. He's big. He's 6'7", 315. He's going to get a chance to play for money, and he's got 4 years of college left. So my hopes are that he, you know, likes the business as much as she does, and I think it's a business they should stay in tune with, because it's something they can do and create on their own and create projects of their liking and make an impact to the community.
Yeah, carry on the legacy.
Yeah.
That's the next goal, right?
That's right.
Having the legacy carried on.
Right.
Dean, I said we keep it to 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. Check out the website, Kirkland Development LLC. And is this the one for the Indigo?
Yeah, so it's kirklandtower.com.
Kirklandtower.com.
And, you know, I'm honored. I think what got me excited was your guys' passion for it. So hats off to you, and keep up the good work.
Well, thanks a bunch. We got a summer full of podcasts coming on. Our next one is our 4th of July special. Last year we had Ryan Caldwell.
Yep, with Got Your Six Fishing.
Got Your Six Fishing, which is an awesome one if you haven't heard it.
Cool.
He is a retired vet, has a crazy story about his service in the military, came back and started a nonprofit.
Wow.
Taking veterans out fishing for no cost.
I love it.
So
that's awesome.
Our next one's going to be with Eric Post.
Yep.
On the 4th of July. We'll release that right around probably the 3rd or 4th on the 4th.
Yep.
But thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Dean. Thanks, Ryan. Cody Steinman. All right. We'll
Thank
see you guys later.
Okay.
All right, we're out.